G'day all. So back once more for a Let's Drive for the channel. This time it's in a replica of the some would consider best Batmobile from the 1960s Batman TV show, based on the one-of-a-kind Lincoln Futura concept that came out in 1955. As usual, I'm just going to drive this about, discuss its creation, its usage on the show, how it came to be and its unique history before it was modified into the comic book icon's famous mode of transportation we all know and remember. So hope you enjoy and perhaps discover some new info about this TV show legend. So yeah, hope you enjoy. Cheers.
So here we are in this 1960s TV show Batmobile replica. Donated to us thanks to the guys at Car Chase Heroes. We're able to take this out today for a drive, and we're just going to go through the history a bit of the car. And because this one in particular has got an interesting history, what it started out as, what it ended up, and you know, basically its place in pop culture. Now, in 1955, Ford had come out with this concept car, the Lincoln Futura, which the 1960s Batmobile was based on. The car was initially designed by William Schmidt, and it was hand-built by Ghia in Italy. Now, the car itself cost $250,000 to make. In today's money, that's about $2.5 million, just to put it in perspective. It had made its debut in the 1955 Chicago Auto Show in January of that year. And since then, it drew a lot of attention for its futuristic look. It was something unique that had not been seen before. It had the fins, it had a lot of what was going on now, but again, the double bubble was on it. It had this new futuristic approach that was something that was stirring up in the 1950s with the space race, with all that. However, once the car had made its debut, it was basically no longer needed and had no value to it because it was uninsurable because it had no title. And as such, it had made its film debut not long after that in the 1959 Debbie Reynolds Glenn Ford movie, Started With a Kiss. It had been repainted red in that movie, and again, it played a part in that film. It had a bit of a role to it. Now, a few years later, Ford had been approached by Hollywood customizer George Barris. George Barris had obtained the car, the Futura, for only $1. He had organized with Ford and they sold it to him for $1. And because of its situation where it couldn't be insured, it basically sat in the back of his workshop for several years. So in the 60s, William Dozier decided to produce a live-action version of the popular comic book series Batman, obviously. And he had been looking around for a car, and after some failed attempts, he commissioned George Barris, who had originally built the Munsters coach. And he had asked him if he could build a car for him in 15 days and with $15,000. George Barris had taken on the challenge. Now, it took him 3 weeks and about $30,000. And the car originally was not as you see it now, as it was remembered, gloss black. It was more of a dull black grey with a bit of a white lighting, white stripes and so forth. After one day of shooting, they decided it just wasn't looking right. They decided to change the paint scheme to gloss up the black and add a more of an orange-red lining to it, so it can really accentuate the curves, because this car's got those beautiful curves going on about it. It's got the double bubble windscreen, and even for back then, it was way ahead of its time. It was like an interesting concept. Now, when the show initially aired, originally test audience were not too sure about the show itself. They wasn't sure whether it was any good or what happened. But the car was an immediate standout. And soon after, the show exploded and Batmania had become everywhere. Now, the Batmobile was so popular, it was practically in every episode of the show. It had appeared in promotional tours, it was on the posters, there was no getting away from it. Now, when the show came to an end, the car had not been sold to the producers of Batman. So it was always in Barris's name, was always under Barris's possession. After the show had ended, the car had made some rounds over its course of its many years. It had made some promotional tours, it popped up in some movies, TV shows like The Big Bang Theory. When the car was built for the show, initially because it only had the one car, The Futura that it was based on came with a 390 V8. It's said to be either a 390 or a 368 depending on sources. Now, it was supposed to have 350 horsepower. In the show itself, the car was able to do about 300 miles per hour. Now, again, it's a gross exaggeration, but they'd always speed up whenever it come out of the Batcave. In order to be able to keep up with some of the demands that was needed for filming, 4 cars were made in total. Now, Barris had made fiberglass replicas based on the original shell, 2 that was used for promotions and tours. When the show had ended and Barris had kept the car, eventually the car was sold in 2013 at auction, and it sold for a massive $4.6 million. Now that made it one of the most expensive movie, TV show prop cars ever to be sold. Later on in 2015, the car sold once again. It said that the car had sold for $5 million. In 2016, the car was said to have sold for a 3rd time. And although it's undisclosed, it's still not 100% sure what was sold for, but it's more or less had been sold more than what had been bought for. Now, this car in particular, because of its lightweight, because of its fiberglass body, which is based on one of the original cars, it is just so easy to drive. It's just so light and nimble. And the good thing about it is it's got a big block engine. You can just ease into it, or you can give it a bit of gas, and you just feel that. It's just that nice feel about it. Beforehand, although Batman, even in the comic book, he did drive an array of different cars, they weren't overly as modified as this. You know, you've got the interior going on, you've got the bat phone, you've got the siren, you've got the switches. At the back, you've got an actual, in the original car, you have an actual drag racing parachute. Now, for the jet propulsion, in the TV show, it was supposed to have like jet propulsion, a turbine engine, but they used a paint bucket for that. It was basically a paint bucket that was used for that car, just for the decor. And then they had like a special rig where flames would come out of it. During the 60s, the TV show was so popular and the Batmobile itself was so popular, it went on to spawn, or it went on to allow the creation of the production of the Green Hornet starring Bruce Lee. And even that show, they had their own car, which was the Black Beauty. But that's a discussion for another day. This more or less started the whole sort of movie and TV show car popularity. It's because of the Batmobile that we got TV shows like Knight Rider. We got TV shows like Automan, where they customize the cars. You know, this more or less led into that whole thing about the whole customizing cars specifically to a movie or a TV show. And this car itself has been still so very popular. It's still so popular in pop culture. So this car basically did start that trend that we see now, especially with the Batmobiles. Every new Batmobile's got to be different, more unique. But this one in particular still has that appeal. A lot of people still like it. Even 50 years plus on, a lot of people still like this car. It just has those wonderful curves about it. It was just something different, where the original designer of the Futura, William M. Smith, when he designed this car, he just went all out and gave something unique. I mean, the double bubble windscreen, the whole thing, the flares, everything about it. It was just so wonderfully made. And when George Barris took it on and modified it, basically this car changed motion picture, like movie cars and TV car history. Like, it changed the whole concept, where people like, okay, let's do something unique. Let's try and make something original. Let's try and make something special for this TV show or movie. So I must say, after reviewing the car a bit closer now, after having a bit of a drive with it, after having a bit of a close-up with it, and just seeing all the intricacies to it, seeing all the details that went into it. Yes, this is a replica. It's not the original car itself, but it is heavily influenced by the original car itself. It actually is based on one of the original molds. And although it's on a Lincoln Continental chassis, where the original car was a Futura concept, Lincoln Futura concept. This car is something about it that, even though it's been over 50 years since the TV show ended, and when the car first came out back in 1955, there was something special about it, something different about it. And it was able to capture the imaginations of a lot of people, especially young people at that time who have grown up now, who are now older and like to share that experience, that energy, that passion with it, with their children or their grandkids. It's fun to note that even though the show had one stage become seen as something real campy and, you know, even joked about at times, the car was one of those aspects where not many people would make fun of it. Even though you say, oh, it looks a bit wacky at times, there was something special about this car. And just to know that, even though it's been over so many years, and so much appeal is still belong to this car, where people are willing to pay millions of dollars for it, millions of dollars at auctions, millions of dollars exchanging hands, just to own the original car itself, it says something about the nostalgia. It says something about that period of time when there was innovation in what was created. Sure, there are a lot of people who have their favorites when it comes to the Batman live action series, the cars, where they might prefer the Tim Burton Batman vehicle, the Batmobile from 1989, or even like the Tumbler from the Christian Bale Batmans and Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight series. But the most appealing thing about this car is that, despite all its age, that because it is a product of its age, even though it's trying to be futuristic, it still does have that 50s feel to it in its styling. Despite all that, there is still that appeal where you even see it even with young people today, where they see the car perhaps with their fathers or whoever it might be that takes them to car shows like this one, and they come to shows like this and they enjoy it so much where you can't help but wonder, like, you can't help but be amazed at that magic that this car brings to some people. So I will say that the car itself, yeah, it is something special. I won't lie, it's something special about it. And just to be in the presence of a car like this, where you think how much fun it must have been just to even drive it around back in the 60s, back in the 70s, just to have the car around and enjoy it. So you've got to admit, that is something about it. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the review, and I hope to see you for another video. And I'll see you next time with another car. Cheers, enjoy, bye.
Special shout out to Tom and Car Chase Heroes for the chance I got to drive this tribute car and to film myself doing so. If you would like to have a similar driving experience as the other film and TV based cars to choose from, along with other racing and sports vehicles on offer, please visit Car Chase Heroes at the link in the description below to arrange for a driving session of your own, as they offer a number of different experiences in different locations across the UK. Thank you for watching, and feel free to like and subscribe and to hit the notification bell icon, as your support is what helps this channel grow and to bring you more content such as this one.